The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 92.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi everyone, I'm Thomas Sanjurjo, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a reminder to all of our listeners, please be sure to share the podcast on Twitter or Facebook, and leave us a review and let us know how we're doing. It also helps to get us seen by more people who would be interested in listening to our show. And I'll say word of mouth is a really good way to share this show, because I talk about it all the time, and I have friends that I've talked about about it like 20 times, and they just started listening. They're like, wow, the show's really great. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of why I talk about it all the time. So so just tell people about it. Keep reminding them, even if you've talked to them about it, tell them again. So today we're continuing our series of character devoted episodes, where we're going to take a deeper look at the character Boba Fett, who I am calling the oddly iconic microcosm of the Star Wars way. And joining me today on the show are Angela Sealana.
Hello, I am all Angela Sealana, yes.
All of you, yeah. It's one of those things where writing scripts, man. It's so hard. So it's just going to be Angela and I today. It looks like the Fetts are getting a 2-on-1 tag team.
Oh, yeah.
Both the father and the son here. This one I think is going to be great, and I really want to go outside of the boundaries of just talking about the character, because I think, like I said, in a really odd way, I feel like Boba Fett is Star Wars, and he represents so much of how Star Wars works. So if anybody's unsure of why Star Wars is popular or how it's gotten as popular as it has, I think if you look at this character really carefully, you see it's partially accidental, a lot of just kind of hodged together random junk, and it's best when it says the least. I think that's kind of Star Wars in a nutshell, when you get those three things together, and also having a nice inspiration from a Western. those four things right there, and that kind of makes Star Wars.
Totally.
So yes, sometimes we joke on the show about how central to the whole Star Wars story Jango Fett is, because he's the father of the clones. He's without the Clone Wars there would be no Empire. But in a lot of ways, I feel like Boba Fett is that same thing, but for the model of Star Wars as a whole. And so before we get too far in the weeds with Boba Fett, I'm going to read the entire script of Boba Fett from the first trilogy. Here it is. I'm going to do the whole thing right now. So, you don't have to fast forward much if you don't want to listen to it all. It's really right here. It says, "He's no good to me dead. As you wish. Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold. What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me."
Bravo, well done.
And that's it. That's the whole thing. Yay. I think that's to me, it's like when you look back at that and look at this character and how iconic he is, it's kind of underwhelming that that's the entirety of his lines in the original trilogy.
Yes, it's almost like, wow, okay, he's a microcosm of Star Wars, bring it on. And then yes, it's those very utilitarian lines.
Right? Pretty much all about Solo.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing that's not about Solo in them. And it's not much. It's just it's about, I want my bounty.
Yeah.
Don't kill him. So okay, official introduction, because that's we've given those for all the other characters. Boba Fett's a bounty hunter whose career spanned the fall of the Galactic Republic through the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire, and now beyond. He's the unaltered clone, the only unaltered clone that we know of Jango Fett, and is proudly a direct copy trained by his father until Jango's untimely death at the hands of Mace Windu in the Battle of Geonosis at the beginning of the Clone Wars. His latest appearance alongside Din Djarin in The Mandalorian was widely anticipated and very welcome from the fans, which kind of brings us to the way I want to talk about him tonight, which is, about the meta, the fandom that surrounds him and in Star Wars in general, but him specifically, I think. So before we get off on all that tangent, I wanted to ask you, but what are your thoughts about Boba Fett?
Dude, well, what are my thoughts about Boba Fett? Thesis number one. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's funny because, I grew up watching Star Wars, the original trilogy, and Boba Fett was like not on my radar as a little girl, because I work in tech like as my full-time job, but I'm just not a like weapons and ships and armor kind of person. I can appreciate them, but yeah. So, I watched the original trilogy. Fine, he's there. And then you get into, the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and then we have little kid Boba. When I really got into him was when his character was developed more in the Clone Wars, and I started to see what an interesting character this could be, from a level of character development and depth and meaning to the Star Wars saga. And then when we got The Mandalorian, it was like, oh my gosh, Boba Fett is so awesome.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my progression and development and evolution of Boba Fett fandom. I really, really have gotten to appreciate him much more in these last few years.
Yeah. I think that as a kid, I think it's a boy thing. It's kind of the masked characters that are so cool, that like stick with us. I always liked my favorite G.I. Joe characters were like Snake Eyes, and the Cobra guys were awesome. They had the really cool masks, and the stormtroopers are neat, but there's something about their masks that just makes them look sort of derpy. and then Vader's obviously cool, but Vader's obviously the bad guy also. So I think with Boba Fett, I really attached to him as a kid because he was this kind of neutral character, where he was a bad guy, but he didn't represent the Empire. He represented his own thing. And I love the way that a lot of the writers took him after the original trilogy, when they made comics about him and all of these other things, that they started to develop the lore of who he was. And it was about just being a harsh guy in a harsh galaxy, right? So everything was really Wild West, and he just had this sense of this code of honor that he followed. And they took that moral gray area that he fell into and really ran with it in a way that sometimes he was the good guy, sometimes he was the bad guy, and it never mattered because what he was doing was his job. And you get to see this fully fleshed out character in that way. And that was really, I liked him for that aspect of who he was, where because so much of Star Wars is about the good and versus the evil, and how we can overcome that and move beyond it. And this was a truly gray character that sometimes he was good, sometimes he was evil. He was just doing his job. Yeah. he was just a man in the universe trying to make his way in the universe, right?
Simple man.
As his father. Yeah. So I'm going to pull this out into the more kind of abstract discussion of him in our world rather than in his, because he's got 4 lines. Like literally there's nothing. He is a bounty hunter, period, the end. And it isn't until much later, after the original trilogy, that we start to see more of who he is. And I'm really looking forward to the Book of Fett, but that's because he became such a fan favorite that he ended up having more of a role in Star Wars than anybody expected in the original. And so I think to me, that's like Star Wars in a nutshell, right? Star Wars was something that Lucas wanted to make because it was a film that he wanted to make. And it is now one of those things that everyone looks back on and says, this movie trilogy changed cinema forever. And that's not what Lucas was setting out to do.
Right.
I think every director is at some to some level, right? But he didn't mean to do that initially, and he did in a very dramatic way, and it's really cool. And I think like the original appearance of Boba Fett is like so great for this, because he appeared in the 1978 holiday special. And that was his first appearance. Now, I have to ask you, did you watch the holiday special?
I have seen it, yes.
Okay. When did you see it?
In my adult years. So not too long ago. And I only saw it that one time.
I think everybody is kind of in that boat where it's like, I've seen it once. Yes. And we will never speak of it again.
I mean, there's some charming things about it. You know, there's definitely some memorable things about it that really stick with you. So yeah, I know that was definitely a huge part of like the fandom's journey with him, right? Mm-hmm. Very memorable and important because he was just cool and his weapon was cool.
Right. His weapon was cool. Yeah. What is that thing? What is that guy with the strange mask? And so, I saw it the same way. I didn't see the holiday special until I was an adult. I heard about it when I was younger, but never really got to track it down until I was an adult and watched it and realized why it kind of gets the bad rap that it does, because it just really is such a bizarre trying to impose something on the Star Wars universe that just wasn't there.
Yeah.
But even the lore around the Life Day stuff has become so interesting now because it's developed. True. Because fans like it. You know, fans are like, this is so bizarre. We're gonna make it fit. We're gonna work it until it actually fits in this universe. And that's to me that's what this character is, right? He was really quickly written. I think they started writing the holiday special in like April of that year. And they had to have it out by Christmas time because they wanted to release something at Christmas to sell Star Wars toys, right? And so they had to put as much kind of new toy stuff in there as they could. And so Boba Fett fits that bill to a T. He was based on Sergio Leone's Man with No Name. That's, Lucas has said multiple times that's what he based it on, which is Clint Eastwood character, great spaghetti Western character to kind of throw into this whole thing. And then his design is just kind of hobbled together from like this concept art that Ralph McQuarrie had made for Darth Vader. And so they just took some of that stuff, smoshed it together and put it on the screen. And there you go.
Yeah.
And
he's a cool looking cowboy, space cowboy.
Right.
The original.
And he's riding this thing in like it's like a horse. He rides on this horse looking thing. And yeah. And it's so bizarre that it's like it caught on and took off, and people really, really love this character that is, I mean, literally his ship is made from trash. So do you know the story of his,
no,
of, his
of
the Slave One? Okay, so this is really cool. They were trying to put some new ships on the screen, and so one of the guys who was designing it, the street lamp outside of the studio had fallen. And he looked at the thing and said, that'd be a pretty cool ship. And so he took the street lamp. So this is literal trash from the side of the studio road. He brought it into the props department, cut it up, spliced some stuff onto it. And there you go, Boba Fett's ship.
That's awesome.
That's the origins. So, I was struck because I did fencing when I was in college. And one of the things about his suit, he wears fencing gloves. So the gloves that he wears in the original trilogy, they're fencing gloves. And when I got the fencing gloves first, when I was at college, I was like, oh my gosh, I recognize these. So much Star Wars had gone on in my life that I was like, yes, this is exactly. I had no idea. So so it's just like this hobbled together, really weird mess of stuff, and it worked.
Yeah. I was going to say, I can see where you're going with this. This is very Star Wars. Yes.
Yeah. It's so Star Wars. And I think that's exactly what Star Wars is, where it's just like, you got this group of kids that are kind of new to the scene. I mean, Harrison Ford, for crying out loud, he was a carpenter before he got his break, not in Star Wars, but in another movie that Lucas and Spielberg had worked on together. And he, he's a household name of a star now because of those two guys and the roles that they got him into and who he was. So it's interesting to me that this is the way Star Wars is, right? Where it's just, let's just throw some stuff together and it'll be fun.
Yeah. And it turned out to be very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's why I think I love looking back at this guy, because he's so much that. And I think the other thing
I was going to say, I feel like he's also that microcosm on a deeper level. So I don't know if you were going to go there too, like with his character development and just his story, how it's very father centered, and it's very much about making your way in the galaxy, like finding out who you are, your identity. So I don't know if we're gonna you were planning to get into that later, or
no, you started it, so here we go.
Okay, well,
that's yours. I'm giving it to you.
Well, as I went back and I actually watched all the Clone Wars episodes that have to do with Boba, and I really noticed how at the beginning, of course he'd seen his father die before him, so very tragic, and I think in a way he kind of has that tie to Luke and possibly Leia as well, just losing that sense of, parentage. And at the same time, he also has this, I think he approaches the other clones, like when he's still a kid and he's trying to make his revenge on Mace Windu for killing his father. He kind of tries to integrate himself just to accomplish his mission with the other clones that are his age. And he gets to a point where he actually gets to a clone that has progressed has aged up, and he has a gun in his hand. Boba does, and he has to get past this clone trooper in order to accomplish his mission, to get his revenge on his father's death, his father's killer. And the clone trooper tells him, "Don't shoot, we're brothers." And here's this like older clone telling him this. And Boba says, "You're not my brother." And he goes to he ends up stunning him. He doesn't kill him or anything, because at that point, I think he is still kind of progressing in his moral conflict with, how he can actually shoot somebody and injure them. But what I'm getting at is he's a character that is rooted in loneliness at the beginning, because he's the only son of his father, who is also a lonely guy, and then he ends up losing that father. And then he has all these people in the galaxy that have his face, his voice, that have his DNA literally, but he does not find a kindred spirit with them. He doesn't find a brotherhood with them at all. He sees himself as this one person who has been not only had his father taken away, but then when Aurra Sing brings him up as a mother figure, then there is this arc in Clone Wars where he gets to a point where he and Aurra Sing are kind of in a battle, and Aurra ends up leaving him, and Boba gets captured by the Jedi, and there's this tragic moment where he looks up and it's just really sad. Boba says, "Oh, she left me." Like, he's so defeated. He has so much that he's lost just in this other parental figure that has left him in this dangerous position. And so, yeah, I really, when I was going back and looking at the character development of Boba Fett, from in his point of view, like, looking from his narrative storyline as a child growing up, to be able to see how he ended up becoming this character that had a tough exterior because his childhood was so rooted in loneliness and pain and revenge and trauma, and I find that as I reflect on that is very Star Wars. That is very like, war. I mean, people growing up in the midst of war, in the midst of conflict, in the midst of all these political things that are affecting their everyday life. That was Boba's life. And he ended up having to kind of don his father's identity, right, in a way, in order to become the Boba Fett that we know today. So it's very kind of, and I'll bring up some more stuff later on kind of when we get to it, but really I was amazed at that, like how they somehow, I don't think it was intentional. Like you were saying, it was very pieced together, like over the years.
Oh yeah, that wasn't even his story. No. At the beginning of even as Lucas was writing the sequel trilogy, he was still debating making Boba Fett Anakin's brother. Like that was still kind of in his wheelhouse of the way he was thinking about things. So it wasn't until the second movie that they really hammered down who he was exactly. And then you see that moment of like he does adapt that identity of his father. And I was struck by that, watching that moment where he takes on that armor that his father uses and he comes to look like his father. It's very much like that same moment where Luke is hacking away at Vader and cuts his robotic hand and then kind of looks down at his own and realizes, this is me. Yeah. My father and I are the same person. I just have to make a different choice. And so you get a really different take though with Boba Fett on that same theme of continuing the father's legacy, because whereas with Luke he changes that legacy, with Boba Fett it's more like he carries on that legacy, and he becomes that gray area lone wolf guy that his father always was. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with the rest of his story arc as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that brings us to talking about where he ended the original trilogy and how he has continued to be such a dominant force in Star Wars, because I love Han. I think Han is a great character. A majority of what Han does is by pure luck. And the two most hotly debated things in Star Wars, one was created by George Lucas himself when he edited the cut for Han, so that instead of Han shooting Greedo first, Greedo shot and then Han shot back. Yep. And the other one was Boba Fett dead? And I think that was always something. No, Boba Fett didn't die in the Sarlacc pit, and everybody's like, well, how did he survive? How could he possibly have survived? So there was this big back and forth about it, and it wasn't answered until just last year when we saw him rise in the Mandalorian. He comes back and he actually plays a role in it. So I love that, because Lucas has said multiple times that if he'd known how popular this character was going to be, he would have given him a better death. But I think that's the wrong way to think of it, because I think the fact that his death is like this comedic beat in the middle of Return of the Jedi, where it's like Han's blind. He asks what a Boba Fett even is. And then he turns around with a spear and just hits the guy in the back. And that's it. That's what does him in. Yep. This guy, he's got flamethrowers. He's got a rocket pack. He's got a thing that he can shoot out of his arm to wrap people up. And he's taken out by Han, who can't even see, and just the dumb luck of Han Solo is what ends up doing him in. And I think that's what really marks this character as one that you're like, that can't be the whole story. Right,
exactly. I need justice.
This guy's too cool.
He's too cool.
Yeah. So I think that if Lucas had done any more to give him a better death, he wouldn't have had the staying power that he did. And that's also Star Wars, right? Very much.
Yes.
I was not expecting that, but it really worked out in the fans' favor.
Yeah, it did. And we've gotten, so much. I think that has actually contributed to, last week we were talking about how Jon Favreau is the kid in the sandbox with the toys now. And so he was the kid watching that death and probably thinking like, oh, no, So, so now that he has the toys, he can actually make the story that he thinks fits the character. So that's totally cool. And we have George's, Wilhelm scream and Sarlacc pit to thank for that. So.
Right. That's exactly it. See, I didn't even give him, I was debating because I was talking about, I was looking at his lines and I was like, okay, he had 4 lines. Well, 5 if you count the scream, but the scream wasn't even his. It was the Wilhelm scream. So that doesn't count. Wasn't even a unique Boba Fett. But yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to what the Book of Fett is going to be, because it gives us a room to now where all of the rest of the stuff has always been him as a secondary character. We get to see him as the primary character in his own story. And that'll be really interesting because we get to see some of that stuff that you were talking about play out, where he doesn't get to hide behind I'm just the man with the gun. Nope, now you're the lead guy, so there's got to be more going on there.
Right. I mean, besides, we've always wanted to see Boba really, do a lot of damage, like we saw in The Mandalorian season 2, where, he was just really ripping and raring and knocking people out. But besides the action, knowing that he was trained by Aurra Sing, Jango Fett, Cad Bane, all these amazing bounty hunters. So what is his philosophy going into whatever kind of business he's going into? Right. But also one of the things that I picked up from the Clone Wars episodes was something that actually Hondo Ohnaka said to him when he was a kid. And that was when Boba and Aurra meet up with Hondo, Hondo actually looks at him and doesn't know who he is, but then Aurra says, this was Jango's kid. And Hondo kind of looks down at him and says, oh, I'm so sorry. He says, your father was an honorable man. And then at the end of that episode, towards the end, Plo Koon is trying to get Boba to reveal where some they've actually through this process of revenge. And if you haven't seen this arc, do check it out. It's in season 2 of Clone Wars, episodes 20 through 22. So it's a 3-episode arc. But they're actually Aurra had kidnapped a couple, 3 people that were not Imperial officers, that were Republic officers. And Plo Koon needed to go save their life. Boba didn't want to reveal where they were, and Hondo actually tells Boba, do it because your father would have done it, because it's the honorable thing to do. And so from those 2 lines, I picked up on this theme of the honorable thing. And as I then kind of added that on to The Mandalorian and what we've seen so far with Boba, and how he keeps his word with Din to protect the child and to make sure that the child gets safely back to him, even though Boba got his armor. That was what he came for. He had made this deal, like, we'll make sure that the child is safely with you. So he keeps that. And he also, he talks about, we learn about, his dad and the chain code and his armor and everything. And we get this sense of he is, like I said, he is taking on his father's identity, but it's not just being a really great bounty hunter. Now I see it as trying to be an honorable man. That's what I'm starting to see it as. As he has grown and developed as a person and gone through all these different experiences, he must have kept that in his mind. So I'd like to see how that actually plays out with the Book of Boba Fett and what kind of stories he's going to have, because, obviously he is that really, rootin' tootin', big and bad cowboy character, but at the same time, now we have more of that personal, those undertones in his story.
Yeah, I definitely want to see more of the Clint Eastwood style character where he's the gray hat, but he doesn't end up being a bad guy or even a question of a bad guy. He really is the one that goes in and makes things right. And it's interesting that they put him in Jabba's palace for that intro of us to the Book of Fett, because how did he get there? What does that mean? Has he taken over the syndicate and now he's going to be the guy that he's going to go in and clean it up? Or it just opens up so many questions.
Right.
And it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out, because you do see, and I think that's the great thing about having a morally gray character in this black and white world, where he doesn't necessarily stand for good or evil, but he has the potential to do the right thing. And that's one of the things that we so often forget about, is that there really are no, like, the sense of truth in the world. It drives people, and there are plenty of questionable things that happen, and there are plenty of people that do bad things, but that doesn't mean that they are bad people. It means that they've made bad choices. And a lot of times when you've made bad choices, it just keeps snowballing, and you have to keep making bad choices to cover up your bad choices, to make up for your bad choices, to feel good about the bad choices that you've made, and to continue going. Yeah. And a lot of times we forget that it's in the midst of all of that, you have to step out and choose to do the right thing. And it's hard, and it can be really difficult, and that's one of the things that I think is beautiful about going back through Boba Fett's upbringing, where his goal was revenge. It was revenge, and he never gets that. But then he still is driven to become one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, to become this force to be reckoned with, that even Jedi should be afraid of him. And that's an impressive state to be in, to have a goal knocked out of you so early and still get back up and keep going. And then to learn about your father being this guy who was honorable, and maybe that changes you a little bit. And over time, you just slowly move towards that and gravitate towards that better thing.
Yeah, I was really moved to watch all the episodes with Boba in the Clone Wars, because you see how morally conflicted he is. You see how he has all this anger, like you were saying, he has this pain that is driving him to want to, on one hand, do what Aura Singh says and just knock these guys out and just kill them and just get rid of them and all these things. And then he hesitates, he hesitates a lot. And he says several times, oh, I didn't mean for things to go this way, or, oh, I didn't mean for you to get hurt. And he goes back and forth. He's very, very conflicted, even as a child, which is sad, when you think about it. But he's caught up in these two worlds. Like, who am I? Like, what's really the good thing to do? What's really the right thing to do? So yeah, I think that's very Star Wars, because it's about, understanding where do I belong in the galaxy? What is the thing that I fit into, in terms of not just a role or a job or an outfit or whatever, but also like a moral, where do I fit in? What is the right thing to do, but not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's what my conscience says is the right thing to do. And understanding like what your conscience is and how to follow it, I think that's very Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, and even with him, especially with him, how to develop it, because he's had Cad Bane's not the best role model, right? And in Aura Singh for sure is definitely not. So he's had all of these really not great role models on top of seeking revenge in a profession that's questionable at best. So it'll be good to see, because I think that's where they're trying to push him more, is towards that more heroic side of things. And I like that. I like that that's where they're going to take that character, because so many people do like the character so much.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at The Mandalorian again and seeing how Fennec Shand says that she was rescued by Boba Fett. Now she is in debt to him. That also kind of implies this, well, he didn't have to save her, you know. She was left to die, and he did save her, you know, and she's chosen to help him to be in his debt, you know. So that's pretty cool. I think that's also very cool.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of the really good meaty stuff, but let's go back to favorite moments of Boba Fett. And this one's hard.
Oh man, well, mine probably sounds really stupid. I mean, of course, right, when we see him don the armor once again in The Mandalorian, and he's just really, you know, knocking people out, and we've got the music behind it and everything and the explosions and stuff. But what I actually wrote down, you're probably gonna think like, why would you have picked that? Actually, so I really like Asajj Ventress, and he ends up having this kind of connection with Asajj that she ends up becoming part of his bounty hunting crew at some point. And and so one of my favorite moments is when she actually delivers him in a trunk to the ruler of this planet called Quartzite. And the king of Quartzite was trying to basically kidnap this girl to become his bride. And so Asajj takes pity on her, frees her, and then delivers Boba, probably, I don't know if it was willingly or unwillingly, but delivers him in this trunk to the ruler of Quartzite. It sounds really strange that would be one of my favorite moments of Boba Fett, but one of the things that I kind of love is we don't know if he went into that trunk to help save that girl, or if he just got humbled and got his butt kicked by Asajj Ventress and just was delivered to this guy. But I found it so charming when I was rewatching everything and remembering that I really loved that moment. So I don't know, maybe it's just because of my like maternal instinct or something, but I just really loved watching the childhood moments of Boba and understanding more about him as a kid. So I'm going to say that is definitely one of my favorite Boba Fett moments.
That's a good one. Mine actually comes in the original trilogy and not in any of the ways that you would think. But I think the moment that I really like best of him in the original trilogy is when he gives the nod to Leia as she's in the bounty hunter costume coming into Jabba Fett's palace. Jabba the Hutt's palace. He just nods at her, and it's like this tacit like, oh yeah, it's another bounty hunter. Yeah. But you wouldn't think Boba Fett doesn't do that to just any bounty hunter, right? So this is whatever costume she picked, it was the right one. And you suddenly know that because you're like, oh, okay, you know. And it was after the thermal detonator thing, I think is when he does that.
Oh, really? Is it?
Because she makes the thermal detonator gambit, and then that's when I think she gets the nod from him afterwards. He's like, oh, that was bold move, you know? Yes. It's like, yeah. So I love that because he's one of those characters that just, you know, he's important.
Yeah.
You know that he's like, they don't even say that he's the best bounty hunter in the galaxy or anything like that. You just know, like if Darth Vader picked this guy one-on-one to find Han Solo, then you know that this is the guy, that he's just that good. So for him to like, yeah, it was a good move. I wish I had thought of that kind of nod to Leia. It's like, all right, that's that totally solidifies her as a really sharp, very cunning character.
That's a great moment. That moment is so memorable. Cinematography, like the way that the shot is framed when he nods to her, it's very memorable. So yeah, I think that's a cool favorite moment.
Yeah, I like it. It just goes back to that, you know, Western, like tipping the hat kind of thing. And it's done so well that it really just feels right because it's that character perfectly. But then it also is, bringing Leia into that fold of like, she's heroic just as much as all the boys. She's very much a hero in the whole thing. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up, any final observations, thoughts that you wanted to make sure you added?
So one of my favorite lines of Boba is actually in The Mandalorian. And I'm glad that I went back and I watched it, because this line is too good to not mention. He, right after Fennec Shand explains that she's in debt to Boba Fett, this is what Boba says: "Fate sometimes steps in to rescue the wretched."
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah. I was like, wow, why have I not heard that more? Seen it on like t-shirt designs or something. Like, that's really cool. Because it talks about like, oh man, to me, it's almost like Christian in a way, but instead of saying God, he says fate, right? So the concept of like how the wretched, right? Like, I love that term, him using that term, but this idea that he is explaining that about Fennec, like that's the kind of the commentary about Fennec. He's saying, well, she was wretched because she was left to die. But at the same time, I think he's also talking something about himself. I suspect that he's implying something about himself, that he was wretched in a way, like he was lost. He was not abandoned, but he was orphaned, and he was, well, I guess he has been abandoned. He was abandoned by Aurra Sing. So many things that I think he must have taken into himself and how he saw himself. And at some point, something must have happened to him to have maybe understood the galaxy, or, just the Force, or maybe just the way things happen, fate, that he was rescued from seeing himself that way. I think that's kind of how I interpret it, obviously, but I'm hoping that there's, again, more to his character that we'll see in the Book of Boba Fett that kind of like helps us understand why he said that. Fate sometimes steps in to rescue the wretched. Wow, what a line.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. Well, and it's very Star Wars, right? It's very much like Darth Vader meeting Luke Skywalker and coming back to the light side of the Force at the last possible moment and changing the galaxy because of it. So I think that is a really good one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I trust John. I trust all the guys that are in the lead of these things right now, because they are so good at writing stories, and especially, watching the Bad Batch and learning about Omega being the sister to all of them. And that's going to be an interesting twist that I hope we see more of too. I trust that they're going to take this character in a way that's going to be fresh, but also that's going to have that really good redemptive, uplifting quality to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I wanted to mention that is really cool about Boba Fett as a character is that we've seen 3 actors portray him in live action, not to mention like voice acting and stuff.
Voice acting, yeah. I was going to say that's, even once you move into the voice acting, you've got a ton of them. And yeah, he is very much like, I love Tamara Morrison's portrayal of him. I think he's great. He does a really good job with it. But I do like the fact that the Mandalorian is one of those masks that you can put on the character and hide the actor and have a lot of different people behind that and get all the right things out of it that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so cool. I was talking to somebody the other day about how Tamara Morrison is actually quite up there in age. Same thing with Ming-Na Wen. So the fact that both of them are apparently going to be the leads to this series is really, I think, quite unprecedented. I mean, I assume going to be an action type, series, and it's going to be huge, as far as a global viewing audience anticipating this. So just the fact that, you know, Boba as a character is going to be portrayed by this actor that obviously deserves, you know, this opportunity and this, you know, central story that I know will go down in legend in Star Wars history. But I found that to be so fascinating that at his age, that he's able to really be this action oriented character in a new series. Too cool.
Yeah, no, I love the new ground that they're breaking with all the Star Wars stuff. It's impressive. It's unprecedented. And I think that it's neat because Star Wars has changed cinema. And I think it's only fair now to kind of come to this point where there are so many people that recognize that are really into it, that are really involved. And there's new audience coming in all the time. There's new fans that are joining and bringing more of what, and that's the cool thing about Star Wars, is that the more people that get involved, the more it changes and the better it is. Yeah. It just becomes more interesting, and it broadens out into more stuff that wasn't there before. And, you know, there's always the small pockets that are resistant to the new stuff, or
sure.
And I think that's any fandom, but I really love the fact that this one is growing and is so vibrant, and the way that it's moving and the things that it's exploring, they're really neat, and they're really changing the way that we're looking at these classic characters, but also creating new characters that are interesting and worth following and worth having a part in.
Yeah. So it's a great time to be a Star Wars a fan. And just Boba Fett, just, you know, the more that I look at him, the more relatable he is. He's not just the suit of armor. He's not just the cool ship, which we did talk about, like, the trash story, but, you know, just the Slave One also being Jango's ship as well. But yeah, I mean, too cool. But at the same time, a very relatable story, a place of, you know, of rising from the ashes in a way, and doing what he has to do. We'll see how it goes going forward.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions about Boba Fett. And if there's any other character that you would like us to talk about in these kind of in-between episodes, then we'd love for you to let us know. So be sure to email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page, and you can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com, and find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and on Twitter @SQPN. I would like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including James D., Renee J., Daryl F., Frank L., and Penelope W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows here at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, a reminder, you can get the new official Secrets of Star Wars t-shirt. We have a t-shirt for the show that encapsulates our philosophy of finding hope in a galaxy far, far away. It's available in various styles and sizes. You can get yours at sqpn.com/merch. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or you can join us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button. To find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. We'll be back next week, where we're going to begin looking at the Star Wars Visions series. And we're going to be, I'm super excited about that one. Oh, man. And we're going to be on each week after that. So we're back to our kind of weekly schedule going on there. And we're going to take a deeper look at the first episode, which is going to be called The Duel. So until next time, Angela Sealana, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
My pleasure. I'm glad no one got disintegrated during this episode.
We were a little worried about that hour-long time limit and running up against it, but we figured it out beforehand, so we're good. And as always, I appreciate you joining us. Once again, I'm Thomas Sanjurjo. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.